And I just wanted to hit on something we should have done at the start of the video, really, Dara, which was talking about the actual the equity and the strength of the two ranges.
Yeah, this is a very good view here. You can see range versus range. So towards the top of the screen, you can see both players' full pre-flop ranges. Under the gun on the left, big blind on the left, and under the gun on the right. And these are color coded. The strongest hands, which we referred to as best hands on the previous one, they're your 4x, your houses, and then just below that you have your good but not great hands, which is mostly your 7x, and then your weak hands, which are gut shots, some ace highs, etc. For the big blind, and then your trash hands, and you can see that both ranges are contrasted against each other, so you can kind of get a very quick idea of who has the stronger range on this flop when you look at those. If you look at the graph, the x-axis on the graph is the percentage of equity that both ranges have, and the y-axis is the from weakest to strongest hand. So it starts with the weakest hand in the range, and the 100 point will be the strongest hand in the range, and say the 50% is the middling hand in a range, the hand that's exactly halfway through our range. So you can see the green line on top is the under the gun raiser. So their weakest hand has roughly 30% equity, and then their hands gradually get stronger up to the very strongest hands, which basically have 100% equity. The line of the other player, the big blind defender, starts below and remains consistently below, except at the very top it kind of pulls ahead. There's a spike around the 90% mark, and that's where the houses and the fours are coming in.
Yeah. And whenever you and I have done a hand review, you always start the hand review with looking at the two equities of the ranges. So in this instance, I mean, this is an actually interesting point in itself. Under the gun has 58.5% equity against 41.5% equity. I can say from experience that's a very strong range, hence the fact that we bet a lot of the time with range advantage. But as we discussed just now, the big blind does check raise a lot, and this because they've got whilst they miss most of the time, where they've got things like Queen 10, Queen 9 that have got absolutely no sort of place continuing, they've got a lot of 4x. So whilst the under the gun player has range advantage, signified by the equity advantage that they've got, the big blind has got what we call nutted advantage, which is that they have all the strongest hands possible, even if they miss a lot of the time too. And this, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but this is one of the reasons why we wouldn't fire out a bigger bet with the range advantage. We tend to fire a smaller bet because there's still we don't particularly want to make a big bet and then get check raised with this 4 heavy range, because it could get us into trouble, right?
Yeah, you're right. The big blind has more super strong hands here in the form of all the 4x. You can see that they have everything from ace 4 suited down to 5-4 suited, and they even have a bit of 5-4 off, 4-3 suited, 3-2 suited as well. Whereas the under the gun raiser has some ace 4 suited, has some pocket 4s, but that's pretty much it. The under the gun only has 7 some of the time, whereas the big blind always has it, and the big blind has 7-4 suited, which under the gun doesn't have. And that's why when you look at the graphs, you can see that while the big blind's graph remains consistently below the under the gun's graph for most of the time, it does actually spike and pull ahead at the very top. That's basically the nutted advantage there. It's saying that when we get to the really strong hands, we actually have more.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap this up a little bit, I think you might agree with me on this, but what a good sort of starting point for reviewing hands would be to look at who has the range advantage, look who has the equity advantage, and look at who has all the nutted hands. That tends to determine how the strategy goes a lot of the time. Then also to look at the actions that the solver takes and the how often they take either of the actions. I think you can learn a lot from that. And then finally, something I find particularly interesting about solvers, and this is why I've really kind of embraced them in the last few years, is to look for the outlier hands, the hands that don't do what the rest of the range does. And then, for example, I'm looking at ace-4 suited here. We've got all this 4x. We check raise all the time with the 4x, but why don't we do it with the ace-4 suited? And it's because, as you've mentioned, that we are blocking a lot of the hands that bet. You know, the under the gun player is going to bet pocket aces, obviously, and they're going to probably bet most of their missed aces as well. So that's a very important lesson that you can take to any flop scenario. You know, the importance of blockers there. So that would be my sort of initial 3 things to do when looking at something like GTO Wizard. Is there anything else that you'd be looking at in each and every hand solve that you do?
Yeah, no, I think you've covered it very well there. And if you quickly just click on the raise button for the big blind to see the response, you can see that a lot of the hands that fold are the weaker ace X, ace 10 off nearly always folds, ace jack off mostly folds, and the weaker suited aces. So when we're sitting there with ace 4 suited, we're blocking all those hands. So we're better off just check calling them, and hopefully he'll continue to put money in on later streets. Whereas when we have, you know, the queen 4 suited, we're not blocking too much of his give ups.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you enjoyed the topic that we went into today, I suggest 2 things. First of all, you buy our latest book where we go into the whole GTO poker approach in detail. But I also suggest you get GTO Wizard. There is a free trial version. You can play around with yourself to see if it's for you. It's obviously not for everyone, but as I said, I use it as my main study tool. If you do decide to buy it, if you use the URL on screen, you get a 10% discount.